अस्सलाम वालेकुम रहमतुल्लाह। आज टाइम वक्त के ऊपर रब्ता हो गया था, वक्त पर रब्ता हो गया। अऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम, बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। व इन खिफ्तुम अल्ला तुक़सितू फिल यतामा फन्किहू मा ताब लकुम मिनन निसाइ मस्ना व थुलाथा व रुबा। व इन खिफ्तुम अल्ला तादिलू फवाहिदतन अव मा मलकत ऐमानुकुम ज़ालिका अदना अल्ला तऊलू। सूरह निसा आयत 4 इस पर दर्स जारी है।
This is chapter 4, verse 4, and we're continuing with the dars. In this regard, the final point, Huzur is saying that the final part of this commentary is that Huzur wanted to present the people who allege against Islam that because of this permission of more than one wife, this has created such immorality in the world that which is not found in any other society. Huzur is saying that in response to this allegation, he wants to give the reference of a book from which it's got some horrific incidents, and it is not appropriate to speak of them too much because they have to do with the Christian teachings, and that is why because they have attacked Islamic teachings, so the response should be on the Christian teachings. The claim is that where the Holy Quran has permitted polygamy, and it is also permitted slave girls, and as a result of this, in the Islamic societies, such immorality has spread that you cannot find an example of that in the world. And the worst people on the planet are those upon whom Islam has governed. Whether they are Muslims or not, that's not the issue. And in contradiction to this, in the teachings that Christianity has given, as a result of which people should not even marry and should live as a priest, and which then gave rise to the institution of nuns, with such women who swear that they will never marry. Is that the natural? Is that the teaching which is akin to human nature, or is this or Quranic teaching akin to human nature? Huzur is saying that the books that have been written on this issue, one of the most important is Priestcraft, which has been written. This person has worked very hard, and he has written an account of all the monasteries and the situations that were proven from history, and those which have been proven as a result of archaeological investigation. He writes that he mentions them. He writes that when some monasteries were dug, then the treasures that were discovered were little babies, bodies which were been buried in a large number, just because the people who were living in the monastery, their immorality should not be known to the world. So the children that were born, at the end, until they were born, they would give their there was the whole organization, the whole system was giving them protection, and this was daily happened every day, and no one had the permission to let this be known to anyone else outside. And then those babies would also be murdered, and then in the same monastery underneath it they would be buried. Therefore, according to one account, hundreds of bodies of babies have been discovered, which have been buried under there. So they're saying that in any case, Huzur doesn't want to mention, he can't mention everything. He only wishes to mention a few of them, which from which we he where where he explains why this happened and what was the situation which encouraged this. So in this book, Priestcraft, he says every person was to confess his sins to the priest. The system of confession, this is the biggest. This has been the biggest cause of this, and thus the priests were put into protection of everything which could enslave a man to him. So for man, it became essential to should confess their sins in front of the padre. So in the hand of the padre, there was a power in their hands against everyone. So practically, they could make everyone their slave, and the priest had not the power to hear sins, but to pardon them. And the problem was that because he did not just have the power, the church said that he could forgive. So people wanted to be forgiven, and this is why they would go to a priest and they would confess their sins to him, so that he could forgive them. And a lot of them were women as well, who used to disclose their secret lives to them, and through this this used to be a weapon in the hand of the padre against them. And this is how they used to force them into committing these immoral acts. They said that millions of monks and secular priests, and such priests who were secular. So we're saying the secular usually means people who are without faith, but perhaps it means those priests who were not the proper part of the system. Maybe he refers to them as were not a part of the system. So they were all not permitted to marry, all tempered in luxurious abundance to voluptuousness. So we're saying that the word voluptuous, if they have used against Islam, look at where it's been used now. All pampered in luxurious ease. Pampered means to spoil a child by spoiling them, by spoiling them a lot. So he says that he was pampered in luxurious ease. So their morals had been ruined, abundance to voluptuousness, and in order to fulfill their base desires, they had many chances, and because of that, their characters and so on were completely destroyed, were let loose on the female world as counselors. And this, they said, are the horrific people who were let loose on the women of the world. These were the people who were made the caretakers of the women's world, and he used to find from them their secrets, because they were when they used to confess to them. So he was saying that they became sharers of their secrets, with the secrecy in one hand and amplest power of absolution from sin on the other. So on the one hand, they had the power of keeping the secrets, that if we want, we can keep your secrets. And in the other hand, they had the power of removing their forgiving their sins. So this, from this, imagine take that in the Christian world, look at what effect this would have had on the horrific effect it had on the daily life of a Christian family or Christian world. Huzur is saying that in the Islam, if someone is permitted to have two wives, how that could have an effect on on the morality of a society. The reason why someone marries twice is that he stops himself from immoral acts, and this is why he does that. And because for an immoral person, there is no need to marry again, to have the take on the problem of having a second wife. And this other thing he mentions is that the establishment of monarchy, of monkeries, was another means of building up the perfect despotism by papists. That the people who were belonged to the Pope, that is where the papery was, or the Pope system was established there, in order to strengthen the monasteries acted very particularly. So monkery, Huzur says, it means those people who are who live in in the places they were forbidden to marry. And then again, Huzur saying that the word secular philosophy has been used. Huzur saying that what does this mean? Does it mean ordained or not ordained priests? Huzur saying that they're not allowed to have children. Have to marry either, and hence wrote a torrent of corruption throughout the world. And he's saying that in this way, in the whole world, there was a flood of corruption across the world. And the 3rd century, they formed more connection with those women who made vows of chastity, I think Huzur said. In the 3rd century, these people had established their relationships with these people who had sworn that they would always remain virgins, and it was ordinary thing for an ecclesiastic to admit one of these. I'm sorry, I didn't hear Huzur, but under the most solemn declarations that nothing passed was contrary to the rules of. Sorry, I didn't catch what Huzur was saying. He said that these. Huzur is saying, let me look at the reference again. It was an ordinary thing for an ecclesiastic, that for a priest it was a normal thing to admit one of these, to these pretty and good-looking saints, which were ladies, to get them into their beds. This was a normal thing for them, daily routine for them, but with a condition, still under the most solemn declarations. But solemn declaration means that they made a declaration with them that nothing passed contrary to the rules of something. That chastity and innocence, as far as that is concerned, because of our relationship, it didn't have any influence on that. That is, that they made an oath with each other that this relationship would be kept away from that. So these concubines, he's used the word concubines as well. Huzur is saying that I'm telling you in their own words how there is against Islam, just because of prejudice, they have been given. They use the prejudice against Islam, and their own people who are true and honest, they have taken away the veils from their own evil acts, which other people may not have had the may not have done that. He's saying that these holy concubines, he says, they're saying some new words that it's a Latin word, mulieres, mulieres. So they're saying, I think sub improducta seems to be a Latin word. In the succeeding ages, their licentiousness and ignorance increased, that in the 10th century, few of the monks knew the rules of their own order with the sworn to obey, but lived in the most luxurious and magnificence with the concubines. So this began from the 3rd century until the 10th century. It was so bad that there was very few priest or monk who had not broken all the laws of their monkery, about which they had swore that they would they were swore to live according to. So they lived with these holy concubines in a very majestic manner. The history of every European nation is full of this disgraceful details of the rank, licentious corruption of monasteries and these houses. He said it's not just confined to one country. In the whole of European countries and all the European nations, these tales full of disgraceful details are found, that these stories, which are extremely horrific and embarrassing and shameful acts of the rank licentious corruption, that it was such corruption that to permit oneself, which permits anything. Rank means it means the worst to the worst possible, the lowest possible section. So in the monasteries and the priestly houses, they are found in every country of Europe. Disclosures are well known. Reading the reference again, which I didn't really catch, that the secrets have been taken that have became known of the commissioners of the state, of the monasteries in their own countries, previous to the too oppressive for human nature to be mentioned. He said that those commissioners who, before ending the monasteries, and they who finished those monasteries through lawfully, before that the commissions that were who were made to stop these, he's saying that they had to, those things that the commissioners have written are so shameful that we don't even have we can't even explain them. What was worse, while they had been for generations living in this abhorrent style, having the very monasteries swarming with loose women, not only been burning all those who dared to criticize them, and upon trust of the privilege of the diverse persons lettered, had been made bold to commit murder, rape, robbery, theft, and all other unchristian deeds. He was saying that if this was all, that we would have thought that it finished at a point, but it ended at a particular point. But the worst thing is that these horrific people
इन बदबख्तों को
in order to put a veil on their own crimes. Their law completely um,
जो भी
law completely permitted them to burn anyone alive who dared to criticize them,
और
and
हजार
many
बार
such women
ऐसी औरतें और ऐसे लोग
were burnt alive
कहने पर जिंदा आग में
because
जलाए
they
गए।
spoke against these crimes. And the easiest way was, which he was in written, which I was saying the other books have got, which is that I was saying I'll give you the reference first. This is priestcraft 1 verse 144. So we're saying that when you write the pages, you should also write. Or when it was this was published in 7th edition, London, John Chapman, 121 Newgate, Middlesex.
मिडिलसेक्स होगा आगे CCP की आगे हवाला है
Then the reference is XL, as I said.
40 में से
Huzur is saying that these Roman counting these Roman numbers is very difficult. Huzur is saying that it's if it's to the right they add it, if it's to the left they take it away. So it's a long thing. MIDCCCCXLV. Huzur is saying this is the number that's written here. Huzur is saying with this number this book was published 869, 82, 83, 146. They were saying this is verse, these are the pages. I was saying to you that the incidents that you heard of about Germany, of where hundreds of women were burnt alive. This, according to this author, one of the reasons for that was this as well, because whenever a woman had spoke against their immoral acts, they would recall them as witches, and they would burn them. And the church was permitted, and no law could come in the middle that if they commanded that someone should be burned because she was a witch, then no one could stop them. They had such horrible powers, and the manner of that was that as a result of which, even if someone hadn't been proven to be not a witch, you couldn't speak, because there was a test for to test if someone was a witch. They said that the one that the church regards to be a witch, if someone has an allegation that she's a witch and the church accept that yes, this is true to a certain extent, and we should investigate it. And the best test of this was incredible, which was never failed, which was that tie up her hands and feet and throw her into a river, into a lake, and if she is saved, she'll be a witch, and then you should kill her. And if she didn't get saved, then she was innocent, but she's dead now, so you can't do anything about it. Huzur saying that there was no other witness needed, so that woman, according to them, she who could not, even if she thought of speaking against them, they would be burnt or drowned. So they obviously could not speak. So in spite of that, there were some investigations, and these are the investigations that were mentioned when all ordinary things happened, and there was a reaction against it. Then some commissioners were appointed, and the church's power had somewhat reduced. So then when they investigated, they found some horrific stories in England as well. So is saying that such research has been published, English monks and the suppression of the monasteries, by Geoffrey. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last. Barsaville, I think Huzur said. Whatever he has written, Huzur is saying that there's no need to go into the detail, but this was a commission from the government, and as a result of that, the incidents that have come to the forefront is mentioned in this. Huzur is saying, as far as the immorality is concerned, at the moment the whole world is sunk in this flood of immorality. But if you want to compare, because that's what we have, because comparison is what is required here, then we have to say that in the Christian world, whether they are in Europe or in Africa or in anywhere else, in Philippines, in the Christian countries, the immorality is hundreds of times more, tens of. There's absolutely no comparison. So to saying, as far as the non-Christian countries are concerned, their situations are somewhat suppressed. It is not. There is no doubt that in some societies these things are hidden, but despite that, there are many matters from which these things can be analyzed. One of them is the birth of such children who are called illegitimate children, and the abortions, the number of abortions, because when such a child is born, then it's his abortion, where these things are looked at in the societies where these things are looked at with hatred, then they make it very difficult for someone to hide it. So on the one hand, this is because of the pressure of the society, people wish to hide their sins, but it won't be right to say that the published facts that are there, according to them, they have less immorality and more in the Christian societies. This would be wrong, because we know that where there is more pressure, there is also more hypocrisy, and there's some crimes which appear clearly, and people they accept it, and there they don't accept it. Therefore, just to the idea that such things are found less or more there is wrong, because at one occasion I was saying that I had a investigation carried out of poor countries, and I found out among their poor there's a lot of immorality spread due to their poverty, and there is no difference there between poor and non-poor. Huzur is saying that in the Arab countries, because the people are comparatively richer, we can say very clearly that all the people accept this, that in the Arabian countries the immorality is low, and they're good they're good and they're much more moral, and the reason for this is Islamic teachings. So if you say that there is anywhere where there is less immorality, then you can say that about the Muslim countries, and it's because of the Islamic teachings. But sort of saying that there are some other forms of immorality which have spread, which we do not want to not to mention them here, but sort of saying, I want to tell you that because of a pressure of such things, sometimes there are other pressures, but so it is wrong to call one person immoral or another moral. But where there is a complete freedom, where there is no pressures, no such pressures, then many more people get involved in such acts who would not normally do it. If there was any if there wasn't any psychological effects, so such many innocent girls are ensnared by such horrific men, and who are saying that one of the ways of discerning this is the number of abortions, and also the number of sexual diseases. He was saying in this reference he wants to mention some references. They're saying no one can say that in Islamic countries that there are girls or there are illegitimate children and people keep them, because when a child is born then you cannot hide them. The more there is a taboo about it in among people, there is a character against that, then to that extent it's becoming to the forefront, is obvious, is natural. So therefore abortions are hidden very are not hidden very well, and where there doesn't make any difference there. This is this scene who's saying, now let me tell you about the illegitimate children, the number of illegitimate children in various countries with some references. Huzur saying, I've said that I've said this with references, but I haven't got any references. Huzur is saying that you've made me embarrassed. Huzur is saying that anything which doesn't have any firm reference, we cannot present it in here. Do you understand? Huzur is saying. Huzur is saying, have they given the reference of the actual book? Have they mentioned it? Huzur is saying, it's here in front of me. National Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Children. Huzur is saying that all the responsibility on Saleh Safi. Huzur is saying that Saleh Safi, this is on your head, this sin. If it is a sin, it may not be. Saleh Safi is a very mature lady, and she could never have said anything which is wrong. I requested her to tell me from books whose references are acceptable and who have dignified references. If this come from Saleh Safi, then this is enough. Okay, so saying this is one of the other reasons of. Is another way of if somebody says that he's from our Imam said something and therefore it cannot be wrong. So this is, we can say this about her as well, that these references are saying that the United States of America in 1972, the number of children who were born illegitimately was this, and those who were born with that because of marriage was this. Huzur is saying that the figures that have been said is that 2,800,000 odd children were born as a result of marriage, and 400,000 were born illegitimately. And then in 1989 this increased, and because this is a book she's taken it from, so it's not a new book, but in 1989 I think the number had increased to those children who were born with marriages. They were 2,800,000 odd. So from 72 to 1989, there's not much difference in the number of births, whereas those who were born illegitimately, there was a big increase, and it increased to 500,000 odd children who were born without out of wedlock, and this is 17% and of the total that were born in France in 72. It was some 4% I think, and then it increased to 11% in the 80s, and in Germany it was 16%, which increased to 22% in 1982. Because we're saying that from 80 to now has been a long time. In England it was 8.6% in 1972, and 1989 it was 10.9% of the children that were born were illegitimate, and Sweden is the top in this. They're saying from a long time there's strange circumstances that they have atheism and strict Christianity live together in hand, and ordinary general public have become atheists, and their schools and colleges they nourish atheism. And when it comes to Islam, then Christianity has a great power there, and they talk against Islam, and no one can stop them. So if there is anything about this, sorry, Huzur is saying that it is a challenge for British character, and they must address this. In 1972, their figure was 25 point something. That is the German figure that increased to a certain number that was from the beginning. And in 1980, there was 39.7% children were born, about whom there was an official declaration that they were born out of wedlock. In Denmark as well, out of the Scandinavian countries, they compare with each other. And in Denmark, there was 14 point something in 72, but in 1980 it increased to at a high rate. Perhaps they will try to be like Sweden, and from 14 they become 33 point something. So we're saying that this is their ratio. In Norway is much better in comparison, and the reason for their being better is not religion, but because of their a large part of Norway which is rural, and they prefer the they prefer rural lives. So Norway is much better in the rural sense. Whatever crimes there are because of wine, and wine is something they can't live without. So in Norway, despite this, only 8.7, which increased to 14% in 1980, is much less than the other countries. In other countries, Huzur is saying that America, the whole a comparison of that, Huzur is saying this is the numbers of the statistics for divorce, which we don't really need. Huzur is saying that now there's a book according to British, is the publication of British government. Huzur is saying that from there I shall tell you what happened. The official declaration according to the British government made yearly publication of something 25, published 1995, HMS something. This is a new reference. Conceptions, number of conceptions out of marriage has, over the past 30 years, the percentage of births outside marriage has increased to about 1 in 20, almost 1 in 3 in 1993. We'll say this is a horrific statistic, and may Allah have mercy on these people, and we should start a jihad in this society, that you should return to morality, because it says that conceptions outside wedlock, the number of them goes on increasing, and those that have been aborted, there is no record of those. But those children who, after they were aborted, who were born out of wedlock, about them it says that their ratio 30 years ago the statistics, in comparison to them, the statistics 30 years ago, there were 21 child out of one who was born out of wedlock. Now, 1 out of every 3 is born out of wedlock. And these are those which are statistics that are accepted, because here, and I was saying there's another aspect as well. These statistics can be deceiving. Such countries where there is immorality, but wedding has put the veils on them, then very few people who would accept that this child is not born out of my husband, but through someone else. This inclination is also found in free societies, and unless someone makes an investigation on this, ordinarily people assume that that if someone has a child, it will belong to a husband. But this issue is very difficult to discern in the third world countries. If it is there, then, and it must be there, which is because this immorality has been spread, because you cannot catch this. And even if anyone goes to research, if they go to any house, they will oust them from their homes. Here it's not the same thing. Here they have on the one hand, they have it's a great goodness that they help each other in truth, and sometimes they accept it as well. And therefore, where on the one hand there is there's an evil of one sort and there's an evil of good of another sort, and although in some countries some evils have been quelled, others have been given encouragement. In some places where there is extreme strictness, and people where there is where punishments are being emphasized and the lies are going to increase in the society. And this is happening in the third world countries, that they lie and they cover up. They don't feel shy in lying to hide their honor, where this attempt is not being made, and their results are not emphasized. And then because there the truth flourishes, because truth does not have to hide. So because of their freedom, there is a truth which is flourishing here, and which reaches a certain extent, and it becomes the people's moral. Then it can be very useful in many other things. So if these people accept Islam and they return to the true moral values, then you can say with certainty that they will be an example. They will be a pure people. Whereas in some countries, unfortunately, you cannot make such claims with such certainty. In any case, we were saying that this sad statistics that are found, I'm presenting before you because I wanted you to tell you that it's completely false to claim that the polygamy has increased. Immorality is completely false. Huzur is saying that even in those countries where the people lie a lot, in the third world countries, still their morality is much better than these countries. So this person says, although the proportions of birth outside marriage varies considerably between different countries, it is increasing throughout the Western Europe. And the United Kingdom has a relatively high proportion of births outside marriage at 31% in 1992, but the rate is higher still in Denmark and France at 46 and 36%. Those things that I told you about Denmark, they're going very high. They've reached 46% now. It had reached 33, whereas Switzerland was still at 37%, but it may have now left that behind as well. Left Switzerland or whatever country. Sorry, I'm not sure what country Huzur was mentioning in Europe. On the other hand, the rate is still very low, and compared to Italy, it's between 3 and 7%. Who's saying why is this that there it is low? The reason is the same, which I have explained before. That where there is society pressure, then naturally these things are restricted, and if anything has happened, then remains within veils. It is not permitted to come out of the veils. So to say that that Italy is much better morally, this is the statistics are saying this, but the general idea of people who travel there, and who saying I've traveled there as well, and you can tell that there is a lot of immorality, and it's only the family which has kept it limited. And in the northern areas, this is less. There's no doubt in that. But the reason for that is that the family protection play a great role in against morality, against lack of morality. So here as well, we should make use of the same. Wherever this family ties break, then it damages the society greatly. In America, the Muslims, and especially the Ahmadis has a great difficulty. They face a great difficulty because general society there, just as a society, so the numbers tell you that they are very poisoned terribly, and they're so poisoned that you will not find any other society, because at the behest of freedom, they have created a lot of immorality, and there is no other country in which such teachings are found across the world. And American films have created a huge problem across the whole world. They lead in immorality, and then Europe follows them, and then other countries follow them as well. And in the beginning, because of satellite television wasn't available, so the third world countries could not reach such films. But now, unfortunately, because of the satellite television, it has increased hand in hand with immorality, and the satellites cannot run without that, except for Ahmadiyya television, because all the companies that are working for this through the television, who show these programs, all of them, they run with the advertising revenue that different companies give them. They are not a Jamaat who give sacrifices, financial sacrifices like we are doing. There's none of them are like that in the whole world. There is no other example. Ahmadiyya Jamaat, except for the Ahmadiyya Jamaat, such television has not come into being, and neither will it ever come into being, because the Jamaat Ahmadiyya has been granted the capacity by Allah that for the sake of Allah, for the sake of higher aims, they offer these sacrifices, and then they enjoy their sacrifices. And in this regard, Jamaat Ahmadiyya's situation is like that cat who used to lick the tongue, lick something, and she licked it. She licked her tongue. She liked the taste, that she licked it so much that she ate her own tongue. So this is the same situation of the Jamaat Ahmadiyya, which is but there is a difference, that this tongue cannot be eaten up, because this is promise from Allah that no matter how many tongues you lick, you will be given millions more and hundred and billions more. So today, Jamaat Ahmadiyya's television is plays a great part, the miraculous part against immorality, and apart from that, all of television have been got sunk in such horrific immorality that they cannot get out of it. Huzur is saying that I often meet such people, and they confess very clearly, and they say that your television, no one has a power to do that, to make some like of it, because we are advertising companies, and if we make a pious television, then televisions will close down, and all the people who give advertising, they will take their support away, and they'll say that who will watch you, who will buy your things. So where immorality is tied with advertising, then they live on that. This is a lost battle. It's a battle whose decision has already made as to who is going to win. The immorality will win, and morality will lose. And it's only the Ahmadiyya Jamaat that has been granted the capacity by Allah to raise a new voice against all this. And what other people are doing will also be defeated. And the only option is that the Islamic countries should spend their money, and they should make programs, and so that they can make religious programs. But the problem is that nobody watches them. Huzur is saying that people would switch it off and they would turn to other places. Our programs, viewers are guaranteed, and that's another aspect. If they weren't guaranteed, then why would they give money from their own selves? So they're giving money means that they love it. They love the programs, moral programs, so much that they give the money and they give it to watch it. So all their children, they sit stuck to the television, and this, just as people are addicted to drugs. And then Ahmadis are suffering these days from MTA addiction, and it's a good addiction by the grace of God. And this section is already saying, which I'm explaining to you, that as far as immoralities and the different in the world, the immorality is concerned, it appears to be winning, and the greatest part this is playing is not the Muslim world but the Christian world. And this is such a truth which if somebody thinks it's harsh, then it's a reality. These are simple facts which are speaking for themselves. And the more the satellite television is spreading, the system of this is spreading in the same vein, the immorality is also increasing, and the support to immorality, this is why they are popular as well, because of the immorality. If you take immorality out, then their buildings crash down. And despite this, in our Allah has made some inclinations in human nature, and they are displaying themselves. And in many countries, that is for Ahmadiyyat, in many countries the inclination is accepted that usually the television is used so that the people should see immoral films. Despite that, in every family there are some people in whose hearts there is who wishes against, they don't like it, and if they find an alternative, the alternative that they find is Ahmadiyya television, and when they watch that, they find two things which amaze them. One is that there is nothing immoral in it, and then despite being religious, they are interesting, and they grab the heart and the mind, And in this regard, no other Muslim state can compare with the Ahmadiyya television, because to make interesting programs is not possible for them, because if they talk on religion, they'll go to the medieval ulama who do not even go to the Holy Prophet ﷺ, who then they remain stuck in the quicksand of the middle era, in that era when people who used to give strict jurisprudence declarations, and so saying that which there was a time in Islam when jurisprudence ulama had huge powers, and the the country's government was with them, and this was the worst inclination, and this was a time when such horrific cruelties, it gave birth to horrific cruelties which people make a lot of noise about, but still there's nothing compared to what the Christians did. So in the Middle Era, the Middle Ages, the religion was used in an extremely cruel sense, in Islam as well, and this is very embarrassing for us, because the Maulvi always tries to liaise with the government, and he has a strange influence and pressure on the state, that they say that if you want to save yourself from our evils, then you should stay with us. If you stay on our right side, then even though we will be on your left, we shall still save you from our evils. And then in this way they go put their hand in their hands, and the Maulvis of the time, they influence the state, and the politicians go with the Maulvis, and who say that they can't escape from this alliance. And the same game is being played in the Islamic countries, and we try to warn them repeatedly, but they can't understand it. But those people who hear these of them, many write, and they say that today you have said what our heart desires, and before that everything else was just mere stories, etc. But now Huzur is saying that this is a very blessed institution, which is MTA, and we shall spread this, and inshallah we shall try to convert the world's morals into Muslim morals. So they're saying that the situation these days is that immorality is weighs very heavy. And to say that it's more in Christian countries and less in non-Christian countries, even if this is correct, then it's not a safe claim to make, because the balance has been lost. The non-Christian people are also have gone really far ahead in immorality. So saying that another thing which I forgot to mention is that when this immorality increases, then morality and justice, etc., everything is lost. And in this regard, the new horrific matter of child abuse is also a thermometer, that which is more in the Christian, whether it's more in the Christian era or more in the non-Christian era. Huzur is saying that there is no doubt that the Christian era, Christian people are far ahead than anyone else. And in the Muslim era, such incidents happen, but they are quelled. But we know the society that they're very they are such that even if there are only a few incidents in a city, then it creates a horrific scenario, and then the society does something reacts against them, whether the law permits them or not. But this must happen here as well. Huzur is saying that there's this inclination is horrible. Huzur is saying this is a report of NSPCC records.
record
Huzur is asking what NSPCC is. It's National Society of the Prevention of Cruelty to Children.
for the prevention of cruelty.
This is a national society of the UK which protects the women, and it tries to save children from cruelties, and mostly it's from their own parents, at the hand of their own parents, not from the outsiders. They must be saving us outside as well, but the real aim is that those innocent children who apparently are safe in their own four walls with their children. Who else can be more
वही जालिम behavior
sorry, but those parents are being the wolves that attack their own children. And again, for this purpose, the NSPC was created. PCC was created, and it says a record rise. So saying this is from their reports. A record rise in the reports of child sexual abuse. 137% increase last year. So they're saying, can you imagine? That is on their own children. They those children who have no voice, they kill them. Sorry, they were saying that such trials have come forward where the wives and husbands help each other, and there are homes in which horrific things are committed in this present civilized society. And so he's writing that from last year to this year, this has increased. These incidents have increased, and it's been recorded as increased 137%. And he said, I was saying that I don't want to read this in detail because it's extremely hurtful facts. Most commentators, most researchers are saying about this that this is a subject in which people are there's another different type of deception. It's very small because it's not the whole detail, because no one has the power to go into the homes, and they should record what's happening inside the home. And by chance, if through the neighbors or if there's sometimes it appears in school through those children who run from their homes. And sometimes in the winter, as we were saying that in the tube stations you see small children who are huddled together, and in the cold they live there because they don't have any peace in their own homes. And such incidents of cruelties are much more than what the statistics are telling us. So this is the punishment of this crime, which is one of them is which they've been saying. These padres used to attack the Holy Prophet ﷺ and Islam, and there was no one to stop them. And now Allah has shown them, and Allah's destiny has shown them which helps his innocent people, and all of their false allegations and their insults which they were alleging against the Holy Prophet ﷺ, against Islamic society as an allegation, are now speaking in their homes and in their societies. And sometimes his voice cannot be heard because they've been quelled. So this is not in order to show any pride, because this is not something to be proud about, but this is only to express the worry that these matters, they speak of certain the natural consequence of this. Those those inclinations are found in our countries as well, and they had to, they will reach this end if you don't stop yourselves. And the places where people watch films, and those places, those homes, they will definitely leave their evil influences. So saying that I'm not saying it to you, God forbid, as a sense of pride. I'm telling you as a warning that when such situations occur, when a religion becomes a source of hypocrisy, then this kind of things happen. And there's another thing as well, that all of those things, then does the law of Allah sit quietly and permit these things to go ahead? This is wrong. And the law of nature does is the most certain method of ascertaining what is happening in a particular country. For example, some societies can hide their immoralities, and certain families can hide them, but they cannot hide their illnesses, and they speak and they come out clearly, and their deaths and the way that they die, they speak out and they speak loudly, and they say what has been happening in the background. So at the very end is sort of saying that I wish to warn the whole world that in truth, if there is any peace, it's only in Islamic moral qualities. If these qualities are not in any particular country, and then Islamic countries are also responsible and they'll have to answer to Allah. But if they, in any country of the world, if they actually want to leave peace for their coming generations, then it is essential for them to return to Islamic moral qualities, and especially as far as sexual excesses are concerned. The solution of this is in Islamic teachings, and it's the biggest hindrance against this. And if these teachings are stuck to, then society can be saved. For example, is already saying that AIDS is people have been inflicted with it because of their Allah's punishment. And before this as well, there were illnesses which have finished their eras, and in the past there were these other diseases as well, but which were small in comparison. And AIDS is the much more powerful disease. And people said when the beginning, when AIDS came, that there is no. People said to them that you should become good and pure. And then afterwards, when they found out that this wasn't working, there was no effect of that at all. And so then they just said that just be careful. And they said that what can we do, even in spite of that, you're still spreading. And so Huzur is saying that there are accidents also happen, even if they do, they are careful. And up to what point a person who is a slave to their emotions, how can they adopt these preventative techniques, because they reduce their pleasure, because those pleasures that are blindly being followed, they make some they lessen them to an extent, and those preventative measures themselves become a punishment. For example, women who adopt such preventatives, and they have they tie things to the necks of the womb, and there are many matters, many during homeopathy. You're saying that it has been come to me that the cancer of the neck of the uterus is more among those people who wear those caps, and compared to those who keep away from these things. I was already saying that I try to make people understand that don't do this, because if it is in order to prevent having children, although it's not a sin, but it is harmful for you. And about this, I haven't got any research in front of me, so no one should regard this as a medical medical certainty, because Huzur is saying, but this is my impression, and I have many people come to me who have cervical cancers, and many sometimes I have more than about 20 cases, 10 or 20 cases a day, and from their analysis, Huzur is saying that I have come to the conclusion that the neck the the neck of the uterus is injuries. It could be that due to the cancer as well. It could well be because of such preventative measures. But Huzur is saying that I have warned you again that this is only my impression, and this is not as a result of any. I'm not basing this on any investigative report, but perhaps in the future there may be a report which is favors my point of view, but they should be kept away from, and should keep away from such methods. And such methods, Huzur is saying that some people are told by the doctor that they shouldn't have children, but they do it mostly. They do it for the sake of um, for immoral purposes, that they should be permitted to do anything that they want, and then God gives them, they punishes them in different ways, and one of these is this. But the punishment of AIDS is the worst, and that is a punishment which about which to claim that it is certainly a punishment from God. It is such a certainty that you shouldn't have any hesitation accepting this in your mind, because this its becoming a punishment was given as a warning by the Holy Prophet ﷺ 1400 years ago. He said something at the time, at which time there's no idea of such immoralities, and Nawas bin Sawan tradition, in which Dajjal is mentioned, that is Antichrist is mentioned. Obviously the matters concerning the time of the Dajjal are the Antichrist are meant, and that's the time which we have proven without doubt, without shadow of doubt, that this is today's age, where that those vehicles have been invented which have been described as the donkey of the Antichrist, and those people have prevailed over the world, which represent the Antichrist. So this is a time of the Antichrist, and we're saying that this is, in some places it's less, but in some places it's this effect is a lot. And at the end of that tradition speaks of this, and it proves beyond doubt that the Holy Prophet ﷺ kept is giving this prophecy by keeping in view the time, the situation at the time. He says, the Holy Prophet ﷺ said that such people, so saying this, all the words are not here, but it says that those people, so saying here it's mentioned in a different way, but the other tradition that I had in mind is a different one. But this is from Sunan Ibn Majah. I think at the end of the mention of the Antichrist, the Holy Prophet ﷺ says, Yursilullah ta'ala alayhim nasa fi ruqabihim, that then, I'm sorry, I don't think I got the Arabic right, that Allah will create a worm in their necks. But Naghafa, who's saying that when I did in literary research, I found that in Naghaf meant lymphatic glands, that it means such things which are dry and sputum, and wherever these are found, especially on the either side of the spinal cord, are also called Naghaf, because Naghaf definition says that these are the things which are affected, and in that, in particular, there are nodules of meat around muscle or flesh around the spinal cord, and because it has to do with the secretions of the lymphatic glands, so it's wrong to translate this as meaning that it's their necks will have worms born in them, but there are these chains of lymphatic glands which comes into the armpits exactly, etc. as well. And a lot of East AIDS people who have AIDS, they say that begins in the lymphatic glands. As I was saying, is this correct? And Dr. Saab said yes, that from the irritation of lymphatic glands, often in the neck or in the armpits, um, they swell, and they begin the ears and the same glands are infected in the plague as well. So Huzur is saying that in completing this tradition, the final thing that is said that there will be a disease at the time which is being called the naghaf of the raqab, which means the worms of the lymphatic glands, or the lymph system. And the other thing it says is that about whom this is Sunan ibn Majah tradition, that who, and it identifies among whose people this disease will spread. Who is reading the Arabic? This is a Hadith Qudsi, which means it is a divinely revealed tradition, because it is something the Holy Prophet ﷺ is describing which is unknown. He said that no people can have had debauchery and immorality spread that much, so that it would then have this disease, that is that they would commit debauchery openly and then spread it across everyone. They should show it to people. Huzur is saying that when I was saying about the television, exactly the same scenario is painted before us. The Holy Prophet ﷺ says, if this happens, then such people, whenever they do this, they will definitely be punished with the plague. And plague is such that this is such a plague that has never been seen before, and it was a type of pestilence. There is an ordinary plague which, as a result of the rejection of prophets, and here it says that there is a type of plague, that it is a type of plague which their forefathers had never seen the like thereof. And there's many examples of ordinary plague in the history, but this is a type of pestilence. Now Huzur is saying that the same words is used by the experts of today about AIDS. They say that although it's called AIDS, but this is a type of pestilence, a type of plague. Both of these are used about this, about scholars, people who know. Huzur is saying that on the one hand there is this, and then on the other hand there is a prophecy of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. It's a revelation that he received. Huzur is saying that I thought this was the Prophet ﷺ had derived it from his revelation, but it was actually one of his revelations received from Allah, when that this happened in 1907, that in Europe and other Christian countries, there will be a kind of plague shall spread, which will be extremely horrific. A kind of plague. He didn't say that because plague was well known. So he was saying that now, if you combine this to that tradition, that 1400 years ago, the prophecy that was made by the Holy Prophet ﷺ, look with what incredible truth and glaring clarity it has it is related to this prophecy of the Prophet ﷺ is because it was to be to occur in this time. So the Imam of the time was retold the same prophecy through through this revelation, that he should make this declaration. So before the Prophet ﷺ passed away, the final revelation that happened he received in 1900 in 1907 and 8. This was one of them. So now the only argument that's left is that is especially specifically for Christian countries. Huzur is saying that the mention of Christian countries is only because in this day and age, in these countries, the teachings of immorality is given in the name of freedom, freedom, and they think that freedom. They raised a high standard, and they said that man is free, he can do what he wants. But if he do what he wants, they have invited them towards such immorality which is never accepted by Allah's nature. So in the Christian countries, not just in Europe, in other Christian countries as well. But why would it be spread? Why would it spread? The details of this is found in this tradition. So what was meant was, if you read both of these traditions together, sorry, both the tradition and the prophecy, that mostly it will spread among those countries which are called the European countries or other countries, and the cause will be debauchery, because it will be this. So wherever this is found, so it will spread there as well, because Allah is not going to be unjust and say that only Christians should be caught for this crime and the Muslims shouldn't be caught for this crime. So if you read it together, then it becomes clear and there no complication remains. So these are the references using that I wish to present before you. But the the thing to notice that this disease, it cannot be born out of the mutual relationship of married people, whether it's one woman or one wife or four wives. It cannot, if they are faithful to each other and they are they maintain their moral values, then this illness cannot happen at all. This illness has to do with immorality, and then it should also be called unfaithfulness. It also has to do with unfaithfulness, that if a pair has illegitimate relationships, then it has to do with this, and it also has to do with the disease, as a result of which, at the time of the Prophet Lot, some entire nations were wiped off of the face of the earth who had this disease, and that is the reason why it's written with reference to Lot, that the Holy Quran says before this as a disease, as an epidemic, this disease was not found in any other people. So at the time of Lot, this became a international. The whole nation was embroiled in this disease, and this is why Allah wiped them off the face of the earth. And AIDS is responsible. So is it comes out of that. So it's the homosexuality that causes it. When AIDS had not yet been born, people taunted Allah, and to call on honor of Allah, people announced that, "Oh Allah, that Sodom and Gomorrah, their people, will they not stand before you, that those immoralities due to which you wiped them off the face of the earth, now they are spread everywhere, and now you are quiet." But he doesn't know that Allah is not sitting quietly, but he has a tongue, and that tongue has such it speaks out so very loudly. So this is a response to that call, that, "Oh Allah, now where is your honor, your sense of honor?" So this punishment has a very close relation with this, and the homosexuality, these things go together, and this when this becomes comes out to the open, that's when this it comes out. So the question is, what does this have to do with this disease? So Zuri is saying it's the same thing as the people of Lot had with AIDS. The people of Lot, they were destroyed because Allah had not made sexual pleasure just for that purpose, but it did it for the sake of perpetuation of the human race, and this is to do with. So you will not find any pleasure, mention of any pleasure, for which there is no advantage. So keeping such this teaches us about evolution, that if you study evolution, Huzur is saying with this point of view, Huzur is saying that I have analyzed, and I can tell you that every feeling or every emotion which are a part of the five senses, they have been evolved further with the support of pleasure. So, and the feeling has pleasure, and then the pleasure has created the feeling. So the Surah is saying that in man has a lot of enjoyment in food, and the most what is the most pleasurable experience in one's daily life is that the more hungry one gets, the more the pleasure gets, because the more hungry you get, the closer you are to death. So it's the eternity in which there is pleasure, and this pleasure has been slowly it has entered into our in our mouths. They have become taste buds, and they have come into our nasal cavities and made the enjoyment of good fragrance. And so all of these things have combined to make an enjoyment, and what was important for the eternity, that's what has the pleasure in it. So the pleasure is in eternity, but slowly man forgets this, and you don't consciously eat so that you have to have eternity. Even if you, Huzur is saying that people who even if their plate is full, they just they don't think of this. So when this pleasure is used separately from this the purpose of eternity, then it's wrong, whether it's in food or in sex. And they're saying that in the beginning, those animals which have been granted this, you can say about them that they did not have any enjoyment, because we cannot even reach there. We cannot reach their feelings, but we can tell that when this began, relationships began, male and female, then this went from pleasure to pleasure, and then a firm relationship of pleasure with such these two things were combined together, pleasure with these kind of desires. So Zuri is saying that if so this pleasure was made in it, therefore, so that man would enjoy eternity. And Huzur is saying that if a woman did not find the pleasure of having a baby, and to looking after a baby for a mother is also the feeling of eternity, because every person wants to live, and he wants to spread his being, and this is a basic point of life. And whatever is helps you in that, it gives you pleasure, and it takes hours. The life learned enjoyment, which did have enjoyment, but the they couldn't be translated into any physical feelings, but in the future there was always the desire of eternity or eternal life, and anything which makes you spreads you in the world, and that will definitely give you pleasure, and anything that gives you a feeling of power over others, this will also give you pleasure. Huzur is saying that that's what you see, people who go crazy for power and political political ascendancy. They go back at people's doors, and they spend a lot of money, and there is no pleasure in it. But why is it? Because they think that when it will be our ascendancy over others, then that enjoyment is such that for the sake of that they do all these things. And then there's lots of other victories, that will victory of wealth, etc. So for every kind of everything, when there is when it remains for a long time, then it turns into glands. If the pleasure remains for a long time, and then the and when it's whether it's in the beginning, or whether if it's only a few a thousand years ago, they don't become, even if they don't turn into glands, they become a power in themselves. There is the inclination of being a king, or to make others, to enslave people, or to gather wealth. These things all have the cause of the crux of them is that one wants to spread and to have eternity, and this makes you do certain acts from which they try to become famous. For example, if there's a general, he does many things. He sacrifices himself, and he doesn't even feel that he's actually doing it for the sake of his ascendancy. When he dies, his name shall remain, and because of that, all of these things are committed. He commits all those things, and for the sake of the flourishing of one's future generations, is also the same thing, that it keeps people the desire to make that eternal. But when there is homosexuality, then they try to seek solely the pleasure, and they get away from the aim of that pleasure. And so what should be the response of that? That okay, then you can be annihilated if you are not in favor of if you're not in favor of the flourishing of your future generations, then you should finish. Your lot should come to an end. And this is the message that AIDS gives people, that okay, then you should be annihilated, because you don't care about of life of your future generations. That Rasul is saying, this is the same God who does this. And the same God does all these. The rules belong to Him, and He is the one who runs them all. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.